Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Right Guys podcast. Hey, could Trump become president a third time? Maybe. And we're going to watch liberals' heads explode. And now your hosts, Josh Hammerling and Max McGuire.
Maybe. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Max McGuire here with Mr. Producer Josh Hammerling. Josh and I were talking about what topics to go with today. And there's the tariffs. There's the Russia.
White House Correspondents' Dinner change out.
White House Correspondents' Dinner is fun. That's fun.
At 3K an ounce, but
they abandoned their anti-Trump comic. But the news of the day is they got Trump on Air Force One talking to reporters, and they're asking him, "Are you going to run for a third term?" And he's like just goading them along, saying, "Yeah, well, maybe, there's possible." Here's the clip.
You said you were not joking about a third term, about possibly wanting a third term. Does that mean you're not planning to leave office on January 20th?
I'm not looking at that, but I'll tell you, I have had more people ask me to have a third term, which is, in a way, a fourth term, because the other election, the 2020 election was totally rigged. So it's actually sort of a fourth term in a certain way. I just don't want the credit for the second, because Biden was so bad. He did such a bad job. And I think that's one of the reasons that I'm popular, if you want to know the truth. I think I'm popular because we've done a great job. I think we've had the best almost 100 days of any president. And most people are saying that. And it's an honor. We're bringing back our country. We're respected as a country again. And we're strongly respected. And people are amazed. I was with some...
Well, he keeps going on. But the gist of it is, it's not something I'm looking at, but lots of people are saying it. And that's what Trump likes to do. He likes to say, "Oh, well, people are saying it, not me. I would never say it. But if I was to say it, I'd say yes. But that's not me. Totally not me." And people's heads are exploding. Heads are exploding. Not since Franklin Delano Roosevelt have we had a president serve more than 2 terms. George Washington famously served 2 terms. And when they asked him to serve a third, he said, "No, America doesn't have kings, and presidents shouldn't serve more than 2 terms." That was kind of like the unwritten rule. Fast forward to World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt says, "Hey, the war is on. I'm just going to stay in office." He stays in office, and ultimately he dies in office. Truman takes over. But he goes beyond that 2 terms, right? Mm-hmm. Then you have the 22nd Amendment. The 22nd Amendment is ratified after World War II. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can read it together, because you would think that this 22nd Amendment is pretty straightforward. 22nd Amendment says, can you read that? I'll make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
No person shall be elected to the office of the President of the United States more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of the president when this article was proposed by Congress, and shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president or acting as president during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office as president or acting as president during the remainder of such term. Okay, the bottom part doesn't apply.
Yeah.
The part that applies is right here. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of the president for more than 2 years of a term shall be elected more than once. So if you're elected twice, you can't be elected a third time. If you take over as vice president 2 years and 1 day, 1 year and 364 days into a term, you would have basically been acting president for more than 2 years, and that counts as a term for this. Yeah. So then you'd only be able to be elected one more time. So you look at this and say, "Oh, Trump can't be elected. Trump can't be elected president." No, he legally, constitutionally could not be elected president. But the fun thing is that you don't have to be elected to become president.
Yeah.
You don't. And so we have the order, the line of succession here Anyone who's ever seen that show, Lone Survivor, or was it was Soul Survivor? No, was it Designated Survivor?
Designated Survivor.
Designated Survivor. With Kiefer Sutherland. There's always a designated survivor. Every State of the Union address, one of the cabinet members basically goes and hides in a bunker in case a nuclear bomb hits Washington, D.C. or blows up the Capitol, and everyone inside it dies. This is the line of succession. If the person in front of you dies or is incapacitated or resigns, you would move up in that line of succession to become president. So talk about some of the possibilities of how Trump could be president. I mean, I can see 3. And again, these are long shots. But I could see 3 the way it would work. He would run. I guess technically 4. He would run as someone's vice president. They would win.
Yeah.
Take the oath of office. They would resign. He becomes vice president and names them his vice president. That technically is a way you could have a 3rd term without being elected president, because you'd be elected vice president.
Yeah. You
right?
can hold the office of president. Yeah, but it doesn't say that you can't be president 3 times. It says you can't be elected 3 times so far, right? Okay.
So that's number 1. You're on the ballot as vice president. Number 2 would be if you weren't on the ballot as vice president, someone else wins the president, their vice president resigns, then the Congress basically names Trump as the replacement vice president, the Senate, the replacement vice president. The president resigns, Trump becomes acting president. That's number 2.
Wow.
Number 3, 2 people completely disconnected become president and vice president. Donald Trump is elected Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House does not need to be a member of Congress. We went over this.
Yeah.
We went over this during the Kevin McCarthy bits. You don't have to be elected a member of Congress to be Speaker of the House. And you see right here on the line of succession, it goes Vice President number 1, Speaker of the House number 2.
2, yeah.
So if Trump were to be elected Speaker of the House, in a world where both the president and vice president resigned or become incapacitated or die, he could then become president, right? That's way number 3.
Yeah.
And way number 4 would be if someone else becomes president, vice president, Donald Trump is named a member of the cabinet and falls somewhere else in this line of succession,
yeah.
And then becomes president through being on the line of succession. Like if Donald Trump became Secretary of the Treasury or Attorney General or State, I think it'd be really hard if he was like far down the list, because then you'd be looking at like a catastrophic event. But but those are really the 4 ways. The 4 ways in which Donald Trump could become. It's a fun little thought experiment. Will it happen? No. But the only way it would ever be possible is if Donald Trump and his policies were so popular that the American people wanted him back. And right now, Donald Trump's sitting at over 50% approval. I saw a poll on immigration. He has 58% approval rating, which is much, much higher than his first term.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, people had to experience what it's like to live with open borders.
Yeah.
Right. But even then, 42% liked the way it was under Biden. That's crazy. That to me is insane.
Yeah, they probably weren't citizens and were just, here.
And that's kind of the problem with some of these polls. You look at the polls, they don't always poll. We're 4 years out from, 3.5 years out from a presidential election. They're not polling likely voters. They're not even polling registered voters. A lot of the times they're just polling adults.
Yeah. People off the street.
Adults, in which case they might not even be registered to vote. They might not even be allowed to vote. Sometimes they clarify that they're citizens, but polling this early, usually it's adults, because you can't measure a likely voter or even a registered voter 4 years out because things change. The only way, though, this would even be feasible would be if Donald Trump's positions and policies and his job approval was so popular that the American people didn't want anyone else. If he wasn't that popular, it would never be doable.
No. You're talking about popular, man. I woke up this morning. I'm looking at X. I'm going through the socials, and people are losing their minds, already jumping on the bandwagon of Donald Trump's trying to be like king. He's saying he's gonna run for a 3rd term, and it's all over the place. Now you and I kind of know that he's probably trolling them.
Yeah.
I mean that's the whole point of it. So why can't they see that? Why do they sit here and claim and just stick to this argument that he's acting as a ruler, a king, right? It
Yeah.
hit me with it. Hit me. What's your thought on it?
3 letters. TDS. Trump Derangement Syndrome. They are incapable of taking the joke. They are incapable of recognizing the obvious troll. They're incapable of accepting the Donald Trump belief that there's no such thing as bad publicity.
I know, right? I mean,
And they jump to the conclusion, right? The confirmation bias that, oh, he's a tyrant. He's a tyrant. That's what they believe. He's a tyrant. He's a fascist. So the minute he's like, well, I'm not thinking of doing it, but lots of people are telling me I should, they jump to, with their confirmation bias, oh, that he must be serious because he's a tyrant. And this is something that tyrants do, right? There's also a lot of liberals now who are kind of armchair quarterbacking this thing, saying, not so fast. The 12th Amendment wouldn't allow it. The 12th Amendment would stop it. Here's what the 12th Amendment says. The important part is down here. But no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. So they look at this and they say, oh, no, Donald Trump running as vice president would never work because he's constitutionally ineligible. But you'll read here that it doesn't say, this doesn't talk about ineligible to be elected again. It says ineligible to the office of the president. And there are differences here, right? The eligibility requirements for the president is what you have to be 35
years old, American citizen, born a natural citizen in the United States.
That's it.
Doesn't say anything about being a felon or any of that. I figured they were going to try to go with the felony route on that one based on that wording, right? Like he's ineligible to hold the office because he's a criminal.
I mean, they could argue that. They argued that before. It failed, right?
Yeah, they did.
But he is constitutionally eligible to be president of the United States. He is just not constitutionally eligible to run for president of the United States, right? That's the difference.
Yeah,
so no, the 12th Amendment doesn't shut this down because like this is basically meaning like if he wasn't a natural born citizen, then no, he can't, right? If a member of the cabinet was, let's say, 25 years old, right? No, they couldn't become acting president because they are not constitutionally eligible to be an acting president.
Well, what about the piece on whether they have been impeached or not? Now, is it impeached, removed from office, or does
he have to be removed from office?
Okay,
be impeached and removed from office, or they have to like the whole thing, like, oh, the insurrectionists, right? They have to get an actual court to convict him of that. Which, interestingly enough, for all of the
what is that doing there? Sorry,
I'm
just trying
for
to say
for all of the charges that Jack Smith and the Biden administration brought against Trump, they never once charged him with insurrection. They could have, right? They could have charged him with crimes that if they had gotten a conviction in time, they could have argued this makes you ineligible, right? They could have charged him with sedition. They could have charged him with a lot of crimes against the United States government where you could argue, right? But their charges against him were like, oh, well, you gave a speech on the at the rotunda at the ellipse, and even though the First Amendment allowed you to say that, we think you incited violence. Which we've gone over this time and time again. If you've ever been to the National Mall during one of these big rallies, there is no cell service. They shut the cell service down. I believe they shut the cell service down for security. But even if they don't, so many people trying to get on at the same time, there's just not enough bandwidth. No one at the Capitol heard anything that Donald Trump was saying.
Yeah.
It's just, it wouldn't have been possible. The sound wouldn't travel that far and they just wouldn't have service.
Yeah. And they had FBI agents in the crowd. So, it's not, they knew what was going on.
They knew what was going on. So technically, Donald Trump could become president. He could become president a third time. He could become president a fourth time, which is why the thumbnail for today's episode, is Donald Trump with a beard. Let's see if I can find it. Donald Trump with a beard. Here we go. Here we go. There's the thumbnail for today. Donald Trump taking an oath of office with a nice little kind of father time-esque beard. I mean, he could run forever. Obviously, he can't run forever. It would never work. I think the American people would reject it. But on the slim chance, did we lose Josh? We either lost Josh or we lost me. Josh will be back. On the slim chance that his policies were so popular that the American people desperately wanted him back, he could become president a third time. Now, is that a good idea? Generally, no. JD Vance, I think we've seen JD Vance do an excellent job in the last couple of weeks. He is the obvious heir apparent to Trump, to the MAGA movement. Very well spoken, very articulate. He believes it, which is more important than anything else, because you have so many Republicans who say time and time again that they're going to do X, Y, and Z and never actually do it, right? I don't think JD Vance is one of those people. So what you'd have to ask yourself is, why would you want to go down that path when you would have an heir apparent? So I don't think Donald Trump would do that. But then again, if the American people wanted it, if he was polling like 55, 60% approval rating, then you have to wonder. You have to wonder. But at the end of the day, you have to. Donald Trump is very skilled. He's very, very skilled at managing the media cycle. He knows how to get a story out there. He knows how to suck the oxygen out of the room. It makes you wonder. Obviously, this was a question that someone else had asked him. It makes you wonder, is there something else up that he wants this to be the story instead of that? Or is this just a no such thing as bad publicity? We will have to see. But I mean, you look at what's going down. Donald Trump is incredibly popular right now. There are some elements of his term that are probably less popular. The tariffs are definitely less popular than, for example, immigration enforcement. And that's obvious, right? But I was looking at numbers today. And that Canada is expecting to lose 19% of its GDP if it holds firm and doesn't back down and wants this trade war. That the Canadian GDP would take a 19% hit. Just think about that, a 19% hit. That would be devastating, right? Absolutely devastating. So Canada's trying to figure out, well, how do we survive this? They don't want to lose face. So I'm just texting Josh, see what's up. As my phone just died, just texting from my computer. Canada doesn't want to lose face. They don't want to appear weak. Obviously, you have an acting prime minister there. That was wild. Let me see if I can find that video from last week of the Canadian prime minister, acting prime minister, not elected, just acting. Canadian acting prime minister declaring that the relationship between the United States and Canada was over. You download that right here. Sorry, Josh. Josh has been having internet problems, so I assume that is what's been going on today. Let me share this video. Here it is, last week.
We will need to ensure that Canada can succeed in a drastically different world. The old relationship we had with the United States, based on deepening integration of our economies and tight security and military cooperations, is over.
That is a crazy statement. Crazy statement from a acting prime minister, which Mark Carney, I believe his name is. He's acting. I believe their parliament is suspended. They've called for snap elections, which, in case you don't know, in like a parliamentary system, like for us, we have elections that are slated like every first Tuesday of November. Mr. Producer Josh is back. Welcome back. He's having internet problems. In our country, it's like the first Tuesday in November every 4 years. States have different ways, but that's when the general election is. In a parliamentary system, they might have like an idea of when they want elections to be, but they also have what's called a snap election. If there's no confidence, if a prime minister resigns, if a prime minister believes that the opinion of the public has shifted significantly enough that the representatives in parliament don't represent the people anymore, right? They can call a snap election, and it's a gamble. It's a gamble because you don't know what the results are going to be. Typically, you call for a snap election when you're confident you're going to win. Otherwise, it's suicide. But we've seen in recent years that there's no guarantee for that. You look at snap elections in the UK, snap elections in Canada. Generally, they've gone the way you expect them to go, but there have been some outliers where the minority party has made some gains that they didn't expect and cut into that majority. Sorry, Jess, as I was vamping a little bit, waiting for your internet to get back. Just talking about different parts of Trump's agenda that are popular. The least popular is obviously the tariff issue, which, by the way, we haven't been affected by it yet. Nothing in our lives has gotten worse or more expensive. It's hit the stock market a little bit. So if you were expecting to take money out of the stock market this month, that's hard. If you're investing long-term, don't take your money out, right? Yeah. If you are decades away from retirement or years away from retirement, there's no reason to take your money out now. It will go back up. Generally in the long term, this is not financial advice, but stocks go up. They go down, but then they go up, right? With the exception of the people who needed their money out this month, there's no one really being harmed by these policies yet. Canada's freaking out, though. Yeah, Canada's freaking out because for decades they've been allowed to take advantage of American manufacturers, American farmers, and tariff the crap out of our products while saying, "Oh no, we want free trade for Canadian goods coming into the U.S." Donald Trump swooping in and saying, "No, we want reciprocal." That has all of a sudden made them go completely crazy. And so now, I was saying as you were gone, there's a study I just saw come out that if this trade war between the United States and Canada ends up going through, Canada's GDP could take a 19% hit.
Oh. Yeah, no wonder they've been willing to at least start negotiating. See, that's the power of tariffs. When you're not using tariffs, people don't realize how useful they can be, because what it does is it forces competition in a worldwide market. And it usually serves the country that is putting the tariffs on the other the best, because it makes your products cheaper than the foreign ones that could easily come over the border. What happened to the whole idea that Americans should be buying American?
Yeah.
That went away under pretty much Clinton. Right? That was the last time I remember.
The idea was, when you have NAFTA or USMCA, the idea was that our economies are so intertwined, it makes sense, right? It makes sense. Don't have restrictive tariffs that hurt Mexico or hurt Canada. Take advantage of cheaper Mexican labor, right? For jobs that could never happen in the United States, right? Some industries in Canada might be a better fit. Like Canada has a lot of raw resources. They have a lot of lumber. Yeah. They have a lot of steel. They have a lot of aluminum. Let's bring that in. That's fine. What we've seen, though, in recent years and recent decades is that car companies in the United States have ditched the U.S. and started manufacturing in Mexico, manufacturing in Canada, where it's slightly cheaper. We've seen foreign interests getting involved in Mexican and Canadian industries, whereas before it's like, oh, well, we'll always be able to get steel. Canada's our friend. Well, when you see China licking its lips at the Canadian steel industry, right? Yeah. Like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe we wouldn't get steel. If American steel dies and Canadian steel becomes kind of beholden to Chinese interests in a weird, like a hypothetical, would we have access to that, right? So there's a very good reason to want a strong American manufacturing base, strong American lumber market. I was looking earlier. I mean, even with Canadian tariffs and everything like that, American lumber, fast growth, Southeast American pine was cheaper than Canadian pine, slightly. And it's on and it was on track to be much cheaper if the current trends keep. Now, obviously, we don't have the same capacity. Canada has wide wilderness that they have for logging, right? But for fast growth pine in the southeast United States, it could be competitive, not to the scale that you have for Canada, but that's an industry that should be supported, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely an industry that should be supported. And when you see Canada has tariffed the hell out of American lumber, you're like, well, why? Why? Like, we're buying Canadian lumber. If someone in Canada wanted to buy American lumber, why would they be penalized for that? Right? You look at Canadian tariffs, once they reach a certain level of imports for dairy, the tariffs jump to like 300% for milk and cheese.
Oof.
And you're like, well, why? Why would that ever be? Like, if we have an economy that is intertwined and you have Wisconsin right across the border from Canada, right? Where a huge amount of American dairy comes from, why would Canada have in place a protection so that Wisconsin dairy farmers couldn't sell into Canada, right? If they have excess production, why can't they sell into Canada? Because eventually they'd hit that 300% tariff threshold, right? And you look at this, and you're like, the agreement was that we had intertwined economies, and yet every time you flip one of the pages, you see another tariff designed to put American industries down, right? I mean, these agreements, these trade agreements, were never supposed to help American manufacturing. They were supposed to give other countries easier access to the American consumer base, right? So the Americans who buy their things. And it's the same with the EU. Let me see, what's the EU tariff?
What's sad is that America got so used to being screwed over. They didn't see it, right? Everyone complained that the industries were leaving. Steel was gone. We can't move dairy across the border. There's no manufacturing here. People got so used to being run roughshod over that they don't realize that you need manufacturing jobs. It supports the entire middle class that you have as a country. And manufacturing goes just beyond that. It makes sure that you have the stuff that you need at home. It makes sure that you've got transformers for electricity. It makes sure that you've got alternators in your cars, right? There needs to be American manufacturing because the world's at a point now, a real inflection point, where if you don't have your own manufacturing, you're going to be in real deep trouble if somebody decides to start rolling over your border. And China's excited, right? Because they've got a manufacturing base that is basically slave labor.
Yeah.
You can't compete with that. I mean,
No,
nobody
you
can.
can't.
But you can have good products. You can have good American-made things. You can have a strong American manufacturing, so you've got a choice in the world market or even your local market, right? That's
Yeah.
the point of all this. Don't be taken advantage of anymore, America.
Yeah. Here's an example, and we're being taken advantage of. And everywhere you look, if there is a tariff in place where the United States tariffs a foreign good, and that foreign country or the EU tariffs an American good, where there's like reciprocal tariffs on the board, the foreign tariffs against American goods are always higher. They're always higher. Right now, if you want to import, let's say, a BMW motorcycle into the United States, the tariff that you pay is about 2.5%. If you're a European and you want to import a Harley Davidson motorcycle, the tariff is 6%.
Eesh.
Not to mention all the VAT taxes and everything else, right? Because that's another way that they play games. They have other taxes and stuff that increase the cost. But the tariff is 6%. That's more than double. And that's just on motorcycles, right? That's just on motorcycles. They're talking about increasing the tariff on Harley Davidson as part of this trade war with America to between 30 and 50%.
Well, then what happens when we raise the tariff on the Mercedes-Benz to 50% and 60%? I mean, this is called negotiation. This is how you keep your country relevant in the world market. And you want to have the most advantage over anyone else. And America has huge leverage on this. I do not know why our leveraging power was squandered so. I mean, you're talking about an incredible economy. It just blows my mind. But could you imagine trying to buy a Harley and you're spending 20 grand in just tariffs, taxes, and it's not even the cost of the Harley yet?
So Donald Trump last week announced that he is going to be increasing, I believe the number was 25%, 25% tariffs on foreign made vehicles and vehicle parts coming into the United States. That's Trump saying, if you want American consumers to buy your products, you need to build them in the United States. I think there will probably be some lesser tariffs for foreign parts that are manufactured and assembled in the United States, though many car companies do that. The idea that foreign countries can just dump cheaply made vehicles in the United States and we're powerless to it. Like, go try and buy a Ford in Europe. Like watch how hard it is to buy a Ford F-150 in Europe. Watch how expensive it is. Watch what happens with emissions if you want to get a diesel truck in Europe. It's next to impossible. It's next to impossible. So this is one of those other things where you look around, you're like, okay, well, how much do we tariff them? How much do they tariff us? We're letting them bring all their cars in here, and they're making it next to impossible to get American-made cars over there. I mean, you can do it, but by the time it reaches Europe, the VAT taxes, the tariffs, all these taxes have made it so it's unaffordable. It's nowhere near the same price range as a Fiat, right? Or even a lower level Mercedes in Germany. And that has to change, right? And the Europeans are pearl clutching. Oh, the special relationship is over. No, well, the special relationship, you want to have a special relationship, it is a two-way street, right? The door swings both ways. You want access to our consumer class, consumers. Great. We want access to your consumers. And anything you do to make it harder for us to sell our product in Europe, we're going to do the same to you, right? And I thought it was interesting. Donald Trump over the weekend had communicated with American auto manufacturers and said that the goal of this is to get more car manufacturing onshore, more car manufacturing and parts manufacturing happening in the United States. He warned American car companies, do not use this as an excuse to raise your prices. The left kind of picked up on this, and they didn't really understand why Trump was warning this. They're like, oh, well, Trump knows that tariffs raise prices. No, he was talking to the American manufacturers, saying that when all of a sudden it costs 25% more for an American to buy your foreign competitor, that is not an excuse for you to raise your prices 20%.
Sure.
Right?
Because you want to jump on that bandwagon of profit.
Yes. Yeah. He said, don't do that. Take the win and sell more cars.
Yeah.
And if you raise your prices to try and just increase your profit margins, then there's going to be hell to pay. Right? This is designed to save American industry, to onshore more American car manufacturing and parts manufacturing. This is not an excuse for car companies to pad their profit margins and do stock buybacks and things like that. Not going to happen.
And the left calls these tariffs evil, but they don't realize this is what creates a job for a union member, right? This is what creates a job for parents who want to raise a family and buy a house. It supports America. It's part of our economy. It's what we do. And to see the left attack it, and to see people ignorant of what tariffs are and what they represent, it blows my mind, because they just glom onto that liberal media story that says, tariffs are going to cause Donald Trump to become rich so his billionaire friends make money, right? Or he's going to make all your products more expensive. The goal of the tariffs is to make your life better, cheaper, with American products at the forefront.
Yeah.
But people don't understand it. Like, I talk to some people that I consider highly educated that have no clue what tariffs represent. And they've never, ever even looked into it. Like, they didn't even ask them, what is a tariff? And they're like, well, it's that thing that you put on stuff, right? The complete display of ignorance blows my mind. But all you get is these weird-ass X stories where it's like, oh, he's just trying to make Elon Musk rich because he's the only 100% American-made car, so we might as well go burn those. Yeah. I love the whole burning of the Tesla thing. Like, that's it's awful. It's just stupid.
So
they don't know anything.
So what a lot of people don't know is the U.S. national debt is now almost $37 trillion.
With a T.
T. Remember when it was like 10, like a
Yeah.
couple years ago?
Yeah.
It was like
Before
15
COVID,
a couple years ago.
it was 15.
Donald Trump and the White House say that these tariff plans, in addition to bringing more manufacturing and jobs to the United States, which would generate more income tax and other tax revenues, right? Putting that aside, the tariffs themselves, they expect would bring in $600 billion a year into the Treasury. That
Really?
over 10 years, they would expect $6 trillion. Now, part of that, it's going to, if it has the effect that they want it to have, which is bringing more jobs back, it'll taper down, right? I mean, that reminds me of how like states will fund their school systems with tobacco taxes.
Yeah,
That's how
right.
they fund schools. Well, what do they then do in the schools? Understandably, they teach kids not to smoke. So as less people smoke, the tobacco taxes go down. There's less funding for the schools, right? Same deal with tariffs. You tariff a foreign good. As Americans buy fewer foreign goods and focus on American goods, the tariff revenue goes down over time. But they're expecting over 10 years, $6 trillion, which in 10 years, this would basically shave off 1/6 of the current national debt.
Wow. Wow.
Which is, it's still just, it's not enough, right?
No, it's not even close. Because they've been spending $1 trillion more. It was $1 trillion more a year than they were bringing in, and Congress is just blowing the money. And then COVID hits. That cost us another 15 trillion, I think.
They still haven't even spent all of the COVID money. It's
That's
still just a lot of it's still
insane.
just sitting
It's
there.
insane.
Yeah. So, I mean, you look at this and you say, okay, it would have the effect of bringing American jobs, protecting American jobs, existing jobs, right? Bringing more manufacturing jobs into the United States, right? Bolstering that industry while also collecting for the people who say, oh, I have to have a BMW, and they're wealthy enough to only buy BMWs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Congratulations. You are contributing to paying off our national debt. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Right? It's a conversation we have to have, because at this point, you see how that national debt is growing?
Yeah.
It is growing faster than the Doge clock, which the Doge clock is an estimate, right? The Doge clock, they estimate that they've saved $264 billion. And that's obviously averaged out over a 10-year span, how much it would have cost, right? They've saved $2,356 per taxpayer. The current debt per taxpayer is $323,000, right? That is literally pennies, less than pennies, the fraction of a penny. We have to explore how we are going to pay off this debt. There has to be an exploration, and there's really two choices. Do we basically charge foreign countries, which again get paid, the tariffs get paid by the importers, but it ends up hurting the foreign countries because they lower prices to accommodate. Do you focus on taxing those outside, or you tax everyone inside?
Mm-hmm.
The politician in them says, no, we can't raise taxes on Americans. So that really only leaves one option.
Tariffs. I mean, this country could be at a point where our tariffs were paying for everything. Right? I mean, we could have hundreds of billions of dollars.
That's how it used to be. Before
we
had an income tax. We had the creation of the income tax. That became the primary creation of the income tax, and then creation of the entitlement programs, right? When in a world where the government has this huge spending towards Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, VA spending, people rely on it, right? Absolutely. But you have to fund it somehow. And we've been very comfortable with not funding it, not actually paying for it. You and I probably will never touch Social Security.
No,
I don't think it'll exist.
It won't. I mean, by the time you and I would be there, this thing could be at 60, 70, $100 trillion in debt. I mean, what kind of country exists once they're $100 trillion in debt? How can you exist when you're $36 trillion in debt? Yeah. I mean, this number should be so scary to everyone, but nobody gives a crap. They sit around and they still go to their wonderful liberal protests, right? They're out there setting Teslas on fire, and they don't see the fire that's happening in their own house. They don't see
Yeah.
the fire that a lot of our politicians, right? There's how many continuing resolutions and on the payment to the federal debt was allowed. How many times
Yeah.
have they allowed? They haven't had a balanced budget since what, the 1990s, or was it 2008 or something dumb? I mean, at least Bill Clinton,
In
had
the
a
90s,
balanced
yeah,
budget.
Bill Clinton. The only way to pay this off, the money has to come from somewhere. I would expect sometime in the next 4 years, Donald Trump to engage in some kind of negotiations with the people who hold this debt. A lot of it is the Chinese, but a lot of it's ourselves too, right?
Mhm.
It's not all owned by the Chinese. And engage in kind of a negotiation the way that a business owner would, right? Not to declare bankruptcy, but to demand better terms. Say, hey,
Yeah.
if you don't give us better terms, this debt will never get paid off. You'll never get any money, right? So you have to choose between getting some money or you get no money. There's always been this thing that's it's always you wonder what happens in a doomsday scenario like this. The U.S. Mint could technically print a $37 trillion coin.
And then pay it off, right?
It is technically possible. That would destroy. That would be hyperinflation, like post World War I Germany hyperinflation.
Yeah.
It basically the U.S. dollar would be worthless. Now, post World War I Germany, they didn't have nuclear weapons. They didn't have the strongest navy in the world, the strongest air force, strongest military. They were basically brought to their knees after the Treaty of Versailles. So a little bit different, but you never want to get to that point. But there are steps you could take in the interim to pay it off a little bit. It's just something has to happen, right? Just since we've been talking about this, it's gone up like $20 million.
I know.
Just since we've been talking about this segment, it's really unnerving.
It goes up $100,000 every 3 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I could never. Could you come up with $323,000 cash to pay off your section plus your neighbor and everybody else in the United States?
No.
It doesn't exist. If we took the money from every billionaire that was in the U.S., it wouldn't even touch the national debt. I mean, it wouldn't even take care of one tenth.
And
of it,
that's the thing where it's like tax the rich. That won't do anything.
No.
Taxing the rich only helps if you want to spend. It doesn't help with paying off. So there's going to be some hard conversations that have to happen. But something's going to have to give. And the people say, oh, no, we don't need tariffs. Okay, well, where's this money going to come from? You have to do two things. You have to slow down the spending so this isn't going up $100,000 every 3 seconds, right? Slow down spending, cut the stuff you don't need, and you have to find a mechanism to pay it off. And when the alternatives are you raise taxes on Americans versus raising tariffs, which would be mostly paid for by the wealthier class of the people. Like you tariff foreign cars, you're going to be they're going to be paid by the people who are buying foreign cars. Like even Subaru manufactures their cars in Indiana, right? Many of the cars that we think today as being like imports are actually manufactured here now. The luxury brands are the ones that tend to keep coming in. Now something's got to give. Something's got to give. Give you the final word as we wrap this up.
Man, if the writing is on the wall, we have to control this spending. We do, because if we don't, it's going to eat us alive. And the answer for going after getting our hands around this debt has been to go after the Doge people for showing us how bad it's been.
Yeah,
get serious about fixing the debt, gang. We will not have a country in 5 years if the debt continues at its current path.
No, we won't. We won't. And you see the media's like, oh, they turned off the phone lines for Social Security. People can't call in. They crunched the numbers. I think it was 40% of all calls into Social Security were fraud, trying to steal people's money.
Insane.
Trying to transfer things into different bank accounts. So yeah, one of the ways you stop the fraud is you turn off the phone lines. Inconveniences people. They got to do it online or they got to go to a location. But if the alternative is you got to keep having 4 out of every 10 calls, 2 out of every 5 calls are fraud, something's got to
turn
give.
off the phones.
Turn off the phones. That's it for this edition of the podcast. If you like the podcast, subscribe, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, comment. We're on YouTube, we're on Rumble, we're on X, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So tune in for that. We also have the audio edition, available everywhere audio podcasts are found. That's it for this edition. My name is Max McGuire.
I'm Josh Hammerling.
Remember, the fight to take back our country is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together. See you next time.
See ya.